very classic, basic recipe all over France is ratatouille. Ratatouille is a dish that actually comes from Provence, but has made its way into the French lexicon of home kitchens, fast food, and restaurants and bistros all over France. Yesterday, I actually had a delicious bistro lunch with lamb cutlets served on a bed of ratatouille. So it was a perfect kind of combination, the lamb, which is also Provençal, and the ratatouille. But there is a season, and the season is now, in the midsummer to late summer, when all of the vegetables start to come in, because ratatouille is a vegetable melange or mixing of some of my favorite things, which include peppers. So we have red and yellow peppers, eggplant, aubergine, fennel, optional, but I always love it, tomatoes, and we've got the first, I always sort of wait till the tomatoes are really coming in and they have a wonderful sweetness and ripeness. Some spring onions, although you can use regular onions as well. I'm going to use these because they're just been pulled and they're beautiful. Garlic, of course, because garlic is actually a big part of the flavor profile we're going to build. And then some courgette or zucchini or summer squash. So doing this, you can see I only need one of each to make a nice volume of ratatouille that you can use as a main dish, a side dish, or to put some away in the freezer and pull it out later. So the first thing to do is we're going to chop up, and I'm going to just start with the eggplant. What you want to look for when you're cooking or choosing vegetables is freshness. In this case, eggplant should always be very firm and shiny, and have a nice, there are different kinds of eggplants, different colors, but when you cut them open, you'll see that this is a beautiful, pale, and the seeds are very small, so this is quite a fresh eggplant that's been collected from the fields rather than left on a shelf for weeks and weeks. I'm going to leave the skin on for these, and I'm going to make everything about the same size, big chunks, because I want to see what I'm eating, and it's also going to reduce a little bit. So just cut these into thirds, and then we have our cubes. Next, I'm going to take the onions and prepare those. I'll just use all of these little 4 onions. If not, you could use a regular yellow or white or even red onion. I love to buy the vegetables from the vendors at the farmers market and the actual farm shops. And I'm going to leave some of that green stem on there because it's also a nice shape, and just cut these in half. If you have a bigger onion, you want to cut it into quarters or even smaller. This has a bit of the skin. We'll take that off. And let's get the garlic. We'll get a couple cloves here. And all I'll do with these is leave the cloves whole. Just make sure to take the wrappers off, the papers off. You can give them bruise them a little bit. They go in, the flavor will go into the pan. Another allium that you could use would be leeks. But I think they're very mild, and in this Provençal dish with the garlic and the other strong flavors, I think your onions are the better choice. And the last little one. Now let's get the peppers ready. And I love red pepper. It's one of the things I will eat raw and just chew on. So I won't throw this bit away. I'll just chew on it later. You can go ahead and open this up, just slice down and remove the inside ribbing and any seeds. You can also trim some of that white ribbing off. And then I'm just cutting these into sort of the size of how the actual pepper grows. And again, into bigger cubes. If you cut things too small, they disappear when they cook and they all get mashed together. And although ratatouille is often thought of as sort of like a stew, everything's together, it's nice to have the separate vegetables. The flavors blend, but the separate vegetables. And in fact, most traditional recipes will have you cook each vegetable separately and then put it in the oven. But we're going to do a simple, basic version, which is all going to be done in a pan on top of the stove. The yellow onion, the yellow pepper has a nice, bright flavor as well as the color, and we'll do the same thing. We'll just go through, take out that center pod seeds. And they go just over on the top. Now, I brought a fennel because I love the flavor of fennel, especially as a summer vegetable. In the winter, it gets stronger, and then it's nice when you roast it or you braise it. But at this time of the year, you can eat it raw, and you can also cook with it. It's nice and fresh. You can see that there's a core that's holding everything together. And I want this to sort of stay together, so I'm just going to trim that, just the very bottom of the core off. And then cut these so they're a similar size. And some of these will fall apart and some will hold together. So my dish is filling up. And it's going to make a nice, just one of each thing makes a nice amount. Courgette or zucchini. Again, look for it, make sure that the skin is nice and firm and shiny. And you can also use different kinds of courgettes, different colors. The ones from Nice that I think are great to use. I don't see them as often here in this part of France, but they're pale green and they have sort of long stripes and they cook really beautifully. And since I had a yellow summer squash, I'm going to add that in as well. So that's the hard work done. I am going to add some tomatoes after everything else gets cooked. I have some Roma tomatoes, which I'll just quarter and have put in. And then a couple cœur de bœuf, which are the sort of regional tomato here that we love in the summer. And they have a nice, they cook down nicely. I'm going to leave these in big quarters so that they don't disappear on me. So you can make this as tomato as heavy as you like. If you made this in the winter, you might use canned tomatoes, especially if you have home canned tomatoes. Or you can use hothouse tomatoes. Not quite the same flavor. Okay. And so that's the amount we're going to use for the tomatoes, but I'll just leave them on the side because I'll add those in at the end. And I'm not taking the skins off of anything because it's going to cook slowly. Those skins are going to get nice and tender. We won't add any liquid. There should be enough liquid that comes out of this. We're going to coax that liquid out like we do a lot when I'm cooking vegetables. We'll start with some oil in the bottom of the pan, and then we'll start adding in the vegetables one group at a time until it all starts to cook together. So let's get over to the stove. The simplest way to cook vegetables is to do it in a saute pan. You could do this in the oven as well, but in the summer I'm not going to turn on my oven for very long. So I'm doing everything fairly quickly to saute it in the olive oil, and then I'm going to bring everything together. So just a nice, like a half a cup of olive oil, and we're going to put the heat on high. And let that get hot. But before I add these in, let's put the herbs that we're going to use into the olive oil so it infuses. I'm using some thyme. This is fresh thyme that's sort of half dried on the stem. I have some rosemary that I'll go ahead and it's also fresh, so it's not hard like hard pieces of cardboard. So a whole sprig of rosemary. And then I'm going to add in some bay leaf. And in this case, this is also fresh bay because I have a big bay bush out front. But you can also use dried bay. But get it in the oil now, and then it'll start to soften and infuse the flavors in the oil. As soon as the oil starts to get hot, now I can start to add in the vegetables. And although it doesn't really matter what goes in first, I am going to start with the peppers and do all the peppers together. Almost everything will take the same amount of time to cook, and when we combined it, it's going to cook again a little longer. Just make sure everything is covered in oil and you're moving around so you're not getting, you don't want to brown the vegetables, you just want to soften them. And as they start to get cooked, I'll add the next layer of vegetables, which will be the fennel. And the onions. Once this is full, it's going to be a pretty full pan, but it also is going to cook down. Let's add the zucchini or courgettes on top. Now the courgettes and the summer squash have quite a bit of water in them, so that's, as we cook, they'll start to get that out and mingle with the oil, and that'll start to create the sauce. We probably will be looking at a total cooking time of about 20 to 25 minutes. And then we'll put a lid on this and let it rest and let it soften up even more. And now I'm just going to finish up by putting the eggplant or aubergine on and the garlic cloves. When you crowd vegetables into a pan, you're going to slightly steam them, and that's going to soften them, as opposed to browning them. You want more space and less volume. So we want that to be slightly steamed together. And as soon as I know that all of the pieces are covered with some of the olive oil, the herb-infused olive oil, we're going to turn it down and let it continue to cook for probably 10 minutes. As this all starts to cook, it's going to reduce a little bit in volume. Everything gets a little bit smaller as the juices come out of the vegetables. And this would be the time now to add in the tomatoes. And I'm just going to put them across the top so that you can let them warm up and start to drip down onto the rest of the vegetables, keeping them moist on the top as well. Let's give this a nice bit of salt and some pepper. Then I'm just going to cover this with a lid, fairly tight-fitting lid, so that it can start to cook and steam and keep the juices and the liquid in the ratatouille. Also, this is the time to turn down the heat so it can slowly cook without browning. And we have about 15 minutes or so until, keeping an eye on it. You might want to stir it from time to time, but it needs about another 15 minutes for it to continue to cook. So with some stirring, but mostly with the lid on, it's cooked for a total of about 25 to 30 minutes now. And there's a nice amount of juice and sauce that's being produced from the tomatoes, from all the vegetables. And it's just coating. The vegetables are soft, and you can test these by using a fork. You can taste them. And the thing I always look for is that the eggplant are all the way cooked through, because I don't like squeaky eggplant. And everything else will just go along with it. I'm going to go ahead and remove the bay leaves, the big bay leaves. And I think we're ready to dish it up. So this will just slip back into the bowl that we used. And I like to dress the ratatouille with a little bit of olive oil that hasn't been cooked. So just a little bit of drizzle, almost like a salad dressing. And a little of red wine vinegar, and that's going to brighten the flavors. You could also use a lemon juice as well. Just enough, it'll all settle down. And then I'm garnishing it with a persillade, which is parsley and raw garlic chopped up together. And that's going to get all blended in there when we go to serve it. So ratatouille can be either served hot as a side dish, as a vegetable dish, as a main course. I would serve this with a poached egg, with chicken thighs, with a piece of fish, broiled fish. You could have it as a complete vegetarian meal. You could have it room temperature or cold also the next day and continue to use it. You can make a frittata with it and add this, or my favorite thing to do is to add it to some pasta. So I love penne or the bow tie pastas or any of the pastas that sort of hold on to the juices, and add, so I have about half vegetables and half pasta, and that makes a great summer supper as well. Thanks for cooking with me in my kitchen today. This is a basic recipe for ratatouille that once you master it, you can use it and start to build lots of other recipes with it.